on straight to Graham Burke. And 1-0.
Duffy.
Oh, what a goal!
Ruben is on the edge of the box. Ruben lets fly.
Why did you take this? O'Reilly. Burn with the shot. Oh, yes!
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 12 of City Talk. This week we are delighted to be joined by Denis Behan for the final episode of the season. Welcome, Denis.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be on.
As they say, it's save the best for last, isn't that right?
Yeah, as a couple of episodes, I can get back to the boys now, and there's nobody can come after me. So
Exactly.
Revenge is best served cold, and he will last.
This is it. Come on, Denis. Looking forward to kind of catching up with you and getting stuck into it, and just kind of give people a kind of cap of the episode. So we're just kind of going to take through your, what you're up to kind of lately, and then your footballing career. So your time obviously with Cork City, but obviously your time spent over in England and stuff like that, and coming back, and how you found life after football. So I know you're a really popular character, a Cork City legend in many ways. So we've got a great response even from fans with questions and stuff like that. So really looking forward to it, and welcome on again.
Thank you. Cork always living here, obviously now. So Cork has always been a good place for me. I definitely had a love-hate relationship with the fans all the way through. All depending on what I did at any given moment on the pitch. But no, it was always good time. Always good time. Even if I fought with somebody, it was nearly always in jest more than anything else. There was never anything. Once you cross the white line and you cross over the other side of the white line, it's two different tennises, I think.
Absolutely. And so generally the way we work the episodes is, so we'll catch up on kind of what you've been up to lately in the present, in current, and then kind of take a right back to, I suppose, to start your football in time, and take a right through back to now again. So just kind of, obviously, look, everyone's been stuck in lockdown for the last 3-4 months and starting to come out of it now and seeing a little bit more football. But how have you been getting on? What have you been up to kind of very recently? You obviously mentioned there that you're still living in Cork and so on, so it's great to hear.
Yeah, so I suppose lockdown for everybody has been a bit of a challenge. I've been lucky enough. I'm an account manager with DHL, so we've probably never been as busy,
Yeah.
So probably been the busiest period I've had with DHL in a long time, because of obviously getting all the PPE and everything in from China, and it's been challenging because you're working from home, your kids are at home. I have 4 mad kids, all under the age of 7.
I don't know, where did they get that from?
I don't know where they got that. But yeah, they keep you on your toes. So you're on these calls, you're on Zoom calls, you use Skype calls, and at the start you're looking at, cut the corners, all right, but after a couple of days they were coming in handing me sweets or taking away something, whatever it was. He's coming in to say hello, So I think lockdown as kind of people went along, because people working from home, they had to take the good with the bad, But no, we survived it well. Thankfully, the weather was key. If we were in lockdown in the middle of winter, I think we would have been in a lot of trouble. Letting the kids go out and play out the back. I was doing the lockdown; they couldn't go anywhere else. So having them out the back, on the trampoline, or just out and about in the fresh air, give them a bit of sanity. So that was good. But yeah, we survived it, thankfully. I think the whole country did. Glad to be some way out the other side. It was okay. It was okay. It's not too often you get to go to work 4 seconds up into the attic, into the office. So
we were catching up before we actually came on live, and you were kind of saying, still doing bits and pieces from home and stuff like that. And have you found it kind of there's been a lot of positives that have come out of it from your own, personal point of view, getting to spend that little bit more time at home and just a bit of maybe a change to the kind of work-life balance? Or have you found that good?
Yeah. I suppose I was lucky enough I could work from home at times, so I had that little bit of a balance there, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not too often you get nearly 24/7, in your own house, not going anywhere, not doing anything else with the kids. So it's so you get to know, a lot more of their traits and, what makes them really, really annoyed and what makes you really annoyed with them, But yeah, it was good. I suppose there's not too many people, I think, that didn't enjoy the kid time, but then after 2 or 3 weeks, you kind of had enough of it as well. You wanted to get out and do stuff with them as well, and kind of get out and about. But I don't think there's too many who didn't enjoy the kid time of it. But then there is a shelf life for all that as well. Then, no matter what anybody says, especially when they're all pulling and dragging out your different sides, looking for attention.
Absolutely, and I think balance in every sense is key. But it's something that I wanted to kind of get in with you in a minute. I suppose you've kind of been a little bit different from a lot of the guests that we've had on, even with people that have retired and stuff like that, in regards to maybe Bar Billy Woods, who've kind of got in after maybe 10, 15 years of being a professional footballer, especially like yourself, who was more predominantly full-time than, let's say, even Billy. And something that I kind of even went through myself, going from playing full-time into a kind of 9-to-5 job, and how you found that and so on and so forth. So we might kind of dig into a bit of that later on, but let's kind of take it right back to the beginning. So Denis, and I know you're a proud kind of Abbeyfield man, but is that where your footballing kind of kicked off and started at a young age?
Absolutely. Abbeyfield for me was always a proper sporting town, from rugby, GAA, GAA being the predominant sport there, and football. But there was always great enthusiasm in the football club by great managers all the way up along, that always tried to make us better, but they always had about 15 teams, kind of way, so it was one manager, he was 14, 15, 16 manager, so how we found the time for that back then. We were giving out about one team here. They had 4 or 5 teams back then, So it was unbelievable what they did. But with good facilities back there for town, really in the middle of everything. The GA great facilities, the rugby had, the football had, there was basketball, we played hurling with the nearest town. So I had a proper rounding of it. I know Woodsy always gives me stick when I scored a goal with Hartlepool over. They said, how did you learn to hit a ball that hard? The GAA, and Woody always give me sick. How could you make that comment and thing? I said, why wouldn't I make that comment? That's just me, Why wouldn't I make that comment, And that's how I learned to strike a ball, the way I struck the ball, how I learned to, judge a ball in the air, because I played so many different sports, from basketball to hurling to everything, Now, my hurling career was short enough because I was told to leave the pitch.
Somehow like you and a hurley, I don't think that'll end well for anyone.
No, it wasn't. It was a short enough career on that one. When I was asked to leave the pitch, I said that's probably enough there. So a weapon in the hand wasn't my forte. So, but yeah, I enjoyed all sports back there, and it was a great breeding ground for that, because all my friends and all my teammates that we all played the same together. So GA was basically the same team, just different sport. And then you had basketball as well, which was kind of a bit of a curveball. Abbeyfield was always decent enough in basketball, but Castle Island and Tralee were always kind of the homes of basketball back there. So it was a pure rounding in terms of that. And I lived in Abbeyfield, just the other side of the town, so I was a walking distance of everything.
But that is something that even Colin O'Brien spoke about when he came on a few weeks ago. He was strong into the GA right up until he was 16, 17, 80, I think, and he found it great to really added to his all-round game, like maybe the physicality of the GA and the fitness and stuff like that really helped when it came to the soccer then.
Especially back then. Nowadays, probably not, because the facilities and the coaches and the soccer-specific training against GA-specific training is totally different now. And you probably really have to make a choice at 10 or 12, about what sport you're going to do nowadays. But back then, if I didn't play GA, if I didn't play hurling, if I was just playing football or soccer, I'd be playing training one night a week, match of the weekend, and that was it. So there's no way when I was in England that I'd be able to keep up with the boys who were training nearly every day of the week. They have the physicality of a gym and all this and the proper setup they had. So it really gave me that all-round fitness and strength that I wouldn't have got, if I was just picking football or soccer. That was it, So that was our full-time training as such, because Monday night was soccer, Tuesday was hurling, Wednesday was soccer, and go from one to the other, So that was our training, weirdly enough, and nowadays, because kids have to probably, if they want to pursue a career in either sport, they kind of have to choose at 10 or 12 now, because it's so specific to that sport, because GA training is longer, more physical training, where soccer is more speed work and speed endurance. So it's a completely different style of training now.
Yeah, excellent. And give us obviously you started kind of getting a bit older then, and maybe taking the soccer a bit more serious. Where did you go from, in that locality, obviously not a big, strong league of Ireland? Where was your kind of next stop to kind of progress then?
Yeah, that was a weird one. I kind of took it more seriously, because my big break kind of came with, say, Frank Nedigan and Bertie Collins were my two coaches underage, and Frank was he was our school teacher as well, and he was one who kept bringing us to Munster schools matches and different things like that. So Frank was constantly pushing, and we'd always play Tralee Dynamos back in Kerry, and we'd always be drawing him in the National Cup, And there was a lad back there, Brian McCarthy, and he was the first regional development officer when they came out first. And
I think his son, I would have played with his son, I think Stephen McCarthy at the Underage City. Is that the same Brian, is it?
Yes. So what you call it? So his son was at Stefan April with us at the time. Yes, so he came up and played one or two games that time as well. But he was a development officer back there, and I suppose being a development officer, you want to show what's the best in your area. So he kept pushing us to trials, So we went to Shannontown. There was a trial there in Shannon, and we got up to Dublin. I went to Dublin, and it's the weirdest kind of fate ever. I went for an Irish under 15 trial with Vinnie Butler. The first day I was absolutely rubbish, but the second day, Brian Kerr and Noel O'Reilly, Lord Mersham, he turned up at that trial day, the Sunday, and I had a stormer on the Sunday. So I didn't make the 15th, but I made the reserve spot for the 16th. So it's a weird twist of fate, and you're talking about taking it seriously. At that stage, when I didn't make the 15s, you're thinking, am I good enough? Am I good enough? At that age, you start doubting yourself massively.
Yeah.
So we were playing a GA game, and Brian Kerr had sent a letter out saying you're on reserves for the Irish in the 16th. So I just thought it was the maddest thing ever. I can't make 15s.
Your own age.
But I'm on reserve for the 16s. Obviously, Brian just saw the style he wanted to play, and I could help in that style,
Yeah.
And I was playing a GA game, and my father had the phone, and I can remember it, just as I was going to catch the ball, I got a belt, and I got a dead leg, and about 2 seconds later, I looked over my father at the sideline. He had the phone up to his ear, and he was shaking. He said I was after getting a call up to the 16s. We were going over to Austria, and I was after getting the worst dead legs I ever got. So. Long story short, I was stuck with a dead leg, trying to nurse that, and of course when you get a call up to the Irish squad, you're not going to say no to it. So thankfully it's quick enough. We went up to Dublin, and over we went to over into Austria, and that was kind of how it worked out. So it was mainly through Frank and Brian how I kind of just kept pushing on that side of it, and then kind of trials followed after that. Then Wimbledon had Stephen O'Flynn. Remember Stephen? That was so Stephen was there, and his dad was running trials in Mallow. It was actually in just outside Mallow, that Doneraile, that he had trials there for Wimbledon. So I went over to Wimbledon, and Stephen was over there. Then we went over to Huddersfield, and had about 6 or 7 different trials as you do at that age. And that's just how it kind of progressed.
Good stuff. And so I suppose was it at Brentford? Is it Brentford you went over to? Did you have a spell with Brentford?
Yeah. So I actually went over to Joe in Reading first of all.
Right.
So So I was there. Now I didn't sign for Reading. I was there for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I remember I met Joe over there, and didn't know Joe, the guy above him,
Yeah.
the first time I ever met him. But he was just a small little munchkin dancing around Reading, and he had this little Cork accent, you know what I mean? So I knew he must be Irish. So
Was he as angry back then as he is now?
well, he was always an angry little man, do you know what I mean? But that's just Joe for you, But because there was another lad there, Simon Cox, and he was on the Irish squad with us at the time as well. So the two of us were there. But like that, I remember just bumping into Joe, just talking for a while, and I never came across Joe again until he came back to City. As I was at Reading, Brentford were looking for a couple of players, and I don't know how. I presume the coaches in Reading and Brentford were talking to each other. I don't know how the two of them kind of came together, but they pushed me off there, and then a month later I signed with Brentford. Then,
Brilliant. And how long did you spend there before you came back? Then, obviously.
Yeah, so the Brentford in for about was season and a half. So I finished off that season, and the next season, so I was finished off at YTS over there. So I finished off that, and then they renewed to the pro contract. They didn't offer me a contract, but they said, "What's your nearest club?" And obviously Cork City at the time was the only club I would consider. So we came back over, and I came on trial here for 1 or 2 games. Becky Daly never let me forget it. It was we were playing a team in UL. I don't know what the game was, but I flew straight over from the UK. Landed that day, played the game, and I didn't know Decky. I didn't really know much of the Cork players at all at the time, because again, Abbeyfield wouldn't have had much of a football influence outside of the UK. And we were playing the game anyway, and I was brought on at half time. Was playing, and a corner came in, it was headed clear, came back in, and for some reason Decky ended up at the edge of the box, and he hit a volley, going flying in, and I got in the way of it. I couldn't get out of the way of it. Now, knowing then what I know now, that would have probably been Decky's only goal.
Ever.
With a volley from the edge of the box. So when he was giving out to me about getting out of the way, I couldn't figure out how he was that upset about it, But obviously, as we went on, I understood why he was that upset about it. So yeah, came back and signed in with the 18s, 21s. Went to Stefan A for a year and a half with Liam Murphy, and then signed pro then with PaulDoolin. After that, he gave us the option then.
How did you find your time in England? Obviously, it's been a big topic on the podcast that we had with the likes of Joe, Billy, Mariah O'Donovan, all people going over and then not working out and come back. Garrod the same. How did you feel? I know you kind of have a bit of a different mentality to those guys, but how did it kind of? How was it for you? Did it affect you? Did it have a positive effect, negative effect? How did it work out for you?
I suppose it takes a lot of kind of to phase me, really. As a lot of the fans will know, they'll be taking stick out of me, and then 2 seconds later, then everything is fine. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot to phase me, because for me, football was fun. It was never a job. Even when I'm back over the second time to Hartlepool, the boys, I'll see him work in the morning. I couldn't get my head around it was work. It was never work. So me moving from a club to a club, told you're not good enough here, and moving on. It never really bothered me, because I was going to play football anyway. No matter where I was playing it or what I was doing. So.
But you never seem to find the player as well that put too much pressure on yourself. You never, not that you didn't take it too seriously, but you never took, you never took it to heart, I suppose, really. You just kind of got on with things in a positive way, really, because I know there is a lot of players out there, and if things don't go right from, the head is in the sand straight away, and they're, getting knocked back, but you obviously seem to kind of brush it off and always have a positive outlook on it, which, I think is great.
Like I said, because I never took it as a job, and I know that's kind of weird, because it was your living, and it was. But if I took it as a job, you're only signing 2-year contract after 2-year contract after 2-year contract. If you're worried every single minute of every single day, you're never going to try and perform to the best you can be. So I always took it that I was in a very privileged position, and that I'm going to enjoy as much of it as I can. And if there was knockbacks, or I wasn't playing, or I wasn't I had two choices. I remember Paul Doolin, sorry, came in, and I would have had an okay relationship with Paul previously, you know, and he would have had a good enough opinion of me in terms of when I would have played against him in Dundalk, Drogheda, sorry. So I felt okay with Paul coming in. But he was right. When we came back that pre-season, we were out of shape. But he gave me an ultimatum. He said, you know, you either get fit and you hit that mark, or you go, you know.
I was there for that pre-season. I remember you and Murph got a bit of special treatment, all right, didn't you?
We were, I think we were part of the Chris Packett team, you know, that had to go and do a bit extra. But they're the kind of like, they're the things I suppose that drove me on. The more people challenged me, the more I'd like to prove them wrong. Not in a kind of a big-headed way, but more of a, I know I can do it.
Right,
you know, and I know I can do it. I know I can get it. I know I can get it right. And I suppose the challenges that were put ahead of me at all times made me a bit better. You know, like when Pat came in and, you know, he turned it into realistically a running club. You know, I wouldn't exactly be the best runner in the world, but I do what he'd asked for to the best of my ability. You're not going to win, you know. But it was, So I never really, not that I always took it seriously in terms of, this is what I want to do, but I never took the knockback seriously, because at the end of the day, it was one person's opinion, and that opinion really, you know, it was his opinion. Everyone's or her opinion. Everyone's entitled to that opinion, but that doesn't mean that I can't prove them wrong at any given time if I get the chance. You know?
I think it's a refreshing mentality, really, like, you know, for players and stuff like that, to have that sense of mentality rather, you know, than taking it to heart and getting totally knocked for six, like, and you know, going backwards with it. It's a really strong mental strength, really.
It's an awful game. It's an awful profession, you know, in terms of, you know, somebody can destroy a player or destroy your mentality within seconds. You know, absolute seconds. Being at local level, underage level, you know, I've been very lucky with the people I've had that have done that. And I suppose because coming from a country background and, you know, a GA background and having, I suppose, enough people throw stuff at you, learn how to deflect what's right and what's wrong, you know, kind of way, and what you need to take in. But somebody can destroy a kid's career in seconds by what they say. They don't have to do anything, just by what they say. And that's why when I got involved with Carrigaline here, you know, it was all about, I suppose, mental health now, you call it, you know, about how you give the player the best platform to play. You know, not lying to them, telling them they're the best player in the world and they're not. You know, you give them the best. If they're not good enough or they're not able to do something, you tell them why. And if they can get better and you can help them, great. If they can't, then you just move them on to some place where it suits them to play, you know? And that's where, you know, we didn't have that when we were growing up along. But look, like I said, I always was thankfully good enough that I was never told I wasn't good enough. I was always in a privileged place that way. But then when people told me I wasn't good enough, I suppose I just had a mentality of, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, you know, and I'm going to make sure that I do come out the right side of it, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose that we'll come back to maybe the Paul Doolin era there in 2009, because obviously that was another key year for you. But take us back to, you kind of came on the scene under Pat Doolin, really, and you know, again, even that kind of era and that squad, you know, like it was a hugely talented squad, you know, one of the best in City's history, really, and you know, went on to win the league in 2005, and we'll get to that, but how did you feel in that period, you know, under Pat and breaking into the kind of the first team and playing a role in it? Because I suppose something that's worked well for you throughout your career is that you were like you were a different type of player, really, like that had been in that kind of squad. So you had John O'Flynn, obviously, the fast pacey striker who'd score. Then you would Neil, who would maybe kind of drop in and get the ball to the people. You were kind of maybe the target man, I suppose, really, that could get the ball up, hold it up, and, you know, you scored plenty of goals as well. So, you know, you played an important role in that squad. How was it for you?
Yeah, like I said, that team, like many people said to me, you know, you played X amount of games with Cork, but you came on for probably as many as you played, you know. But if you look at the players we had in that team,
unbelievable.
You know, there was probably the best squad in Ireland at that time, where we proved it by winning the league after that, you know. But the players we had that were in the position that I was fighting for, you know, was phenomenal, you know, absolutely phenomenal. Some of the quality that was there. So part of breaking into that team, you know, was even the start of that team was a success in itself, you know. But I remember when Pat came to us first, and again like that, so Pat liked the way I played. He liked that, you know, that there was a steeliness there as well. That, you know, no matter what challenge was there, I'd always go in with, you know, maybe that's stupidity or steal is, I don't know which, but you know, he liked that there was kind of a bit no fear that it'd be 100% you'd get at most times anyway. So he gave me a choice. We were playing in a youth semi-final or final, I can't remember which, up in Dublin, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but he stopped me playing the youth game, and he said you have to come in with the first team up to Derry. So part of me was thinking, you know, it's not too often you get a youth medal. Well, you literally have 1 year, max 2 years sometimes to get a FAI youth medal. And I'm thinking, well, will I do that or will I go with the first team? You know, and at that age, you don't really think, as you look back now, well, of course you go with the first team. Why would you go with the youth? Because that's where your future is going to lie. You're thinking, and now. So I said to him, I said, Pat, look, I'd like to play the youth game. If I'm just going to just sit in the bench above in Derry. And he just turned around to me and goes, well, that's your choice. You make your own youth. That was all he said to me. And I was like, well, that's like a Rubik's Cube to an 18-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you make your own choice. You like, give me something more than that to work with, you know. But that was kind of some ways Pat kind of put stuff to you, and then he found out what you were like by the answers you gave.
Right.
You know, kind of way. So, you know, talking to my parents, talking to my father, talking to a few people, you know, it was kind of a no-brainer, but there was always that inkling of there's a youth medal there, you know. And then when they lost last time, you know, I was a bit of guilt in as well in the back of that side of it. But look, that's football. That's what I mean by it's a cutthroat business in terms of, like, you know, it's really about, even though it's a team game, it's about your decisions and what you do. So look, Derry that time, and I think gave about 15 minutes up at Derry, and that kind of appeased me as such. But that was it then, so I made that decision, and after that then he offered me a pro contract to go forward. There was 4 or 5 of us at that time that he offered it to, you know, and he wanted to build that squad of I suppose a new generation of players and a new mentality into the club that time, you know.
Yeah, and again, over those couple of years, even from say Liam Murphy right through then to Pat, and you know, the team was progressing year on year, and you know, European matches, and then kind of, you know, you obviously kind of made a great imprint on it, because I think you went through, was it 4 managers? You passed Rico, Paul Doolin, Alan Matthews, you know, and they all kept you as part of the squad, like, you know, so it was clear to see that they felt you had an important role to play. But in that 2005 season, Rico came in. How did you find the change from, obviously you mentioned Pat's regime there heading into the kind of the Rico time? How was it for you? Because again, it was a bit of a contentious time for other players, you know, some were for it, some were against it.
Yeah, it's a weird one, you know, like as I said, thankfully I've always gone well with the managers, you know. I've rarely come across a manager that I couldn't speak to again, you know. You know, there's one in the UK, but that's fine. I never come across him. That's fair enough. You know what I mean? But within Ireland, there's nobody I couldn't speak to again, you know, from international managers all the way down. And Pat's way was, as a young manager, he wanted us to be as professional as possible, coming from a professional background, and that changed from, you know, the old guard to the new guard, and getting a professional setup and the training and the. You know, we were training 3-4 hours sometimes, you know what I mean, down in Limerick, and like we were fully immersed on it. But you know, it was absolutely the right thing to do. At times, your body was rebelling against you, but he was building us up for that moment when the squad was the best it could be. So then, when Brian made the decision to change and bring in Damien, you know, I spoke to Damien a bit on this, and Pat as well at times over the years, you know, and it probably was the best moment to make that change. Even though Pat didn't like it, some of us didn't know Damien was a guy above him, you know. So we were close the year before, you know. Benno's infamous misstatement that he's have they got the bottle, you know. So we've got a couple of really close to seasons before that. But we were building up for a full title challenge. But I think the change in the intensity that that Pat was bringing at every single second meant that you were on edge nearly at every single second. Whereas when Damien came in, then he just gave that little bit more freedom to do what you want, that to play a bit more, we'll say, and not as rigid a structure that if anything went wrong, that you were scrutinised to the ninth. But I understand then why Pat did that, because it's a bit like in the arm, you break them down to build them back up again.
You weren't ready for that,
No, exactly. So when Damien Ding came in, he just gave that little bit of a release on the rein, and it produced the results that it produced. And so, in terms of that changeover, Brian's vision of how to change and how to win a thing, it was probably spot on,
Yeah, and kind of bringing it down to that night in Turner's Cross, and we spoke about a lot again on this, and I slag Neil sometimes about this out in the office, saying that if he didn't come off that night, I don't think we would have won the game, because you had such a great game when you came on. It was probably surely one of your best games for the club that night, because even watching it back on the Patreon scheme a couple of weeks back, your influence on the game is, it changed the game when you came on, really.
I think it was probably the best scenario to come on in, if that makes sense, because I didn't have any time to think about it. I didn't have any time to through my head. And to be honest with you, I don't think I did anything, anything more special than I did in probably other games. It's just the magnitude of the game was
the occasion.
The occasion was the occasion, and coming up against somebody like Clive Delaney at 17'6", it probably made it easier for me, because I knew I had to be as big
honest
and as strong and as at it as much as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all those factors helped, and I just loved the atmosphere, the crowd, the build up to it. But again, I suppose everybody spoke about this as like that week we knew we were in. We knew we were winning that week. Training was just there. The intensity was just there, and there was I remember Carney's goal. Like, even if you look at Carney's goal there, like, I think it was Roy got it, played me through. And,
that's right.
Then, everybody was just on the same hymn sheet within seconds of each other. The ball just dropped. I was in. He knew I was going there. I knew where Carney was. Now he never returned the favour after that. But that's Carney. That's Carney. He used to carry that cross after that. But look, no, it was probably just the perfect performance for the game. And going into the game knowing we had to win. That's probably the best scenario you can go in at, trying to hold the lead or take a draw. It's a nothing mindset to go into. So, we were so focused that week. It was phenomenal. But then you were so focused on that game that the release afterwards then meant that we probably didn't perform in the cup final afterwards. So it had a drawback at that side of it.
Yeah, that's something I was going to mention. Obviously, kind of, and again, I have mentioned it. That squad as a whole, with the, like you say, with the quality you had, probably, if not the best squad in the league around that time, you probably underachieved to an extent. I know you won the FA Cup in 2007 again, but for that, from 2004 right up to kind of 2008-9, the squad was as good as anyone in the league. That, especially the core that was within the squad, really, and the spine of the team stayed the same kind of throughout those 5 or 6 years. Do you have any regrets in that regard?
But see, there's a couple of factors in that. In terms of the cup final, Damien came to me and he said he was going to pay Neil Fenn. So that proved your point right there, Paul. If Fenny played the whole game in the final, we wouldn't have won the league. Any cup final, so that just meant we weren't going to win the cup final. So that was one factor. So that was absolutely correct in what you thought there, right? But no, on a serious note, because that team had been building up so many different facets of a changeover, in terms of building the team from 2 years before that. Then we got into Europe and we done so well in Europe that there were so many mini wins within the season. It's very hard to keep consistency. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard to you're going to Europe, you go on to the next game you go on to Nantes, and Oilers scores a goal, we only need one more to get through. You go over to Red Star Belgrade, you beat Red Star Belgrade, you're playing AC Milan. All these different, so it's so hard when you're not consistently year in, year out doing it. Plus, you had an unbelievable Shelbourne team. Draw had a team, that were there as well.
It was very competitive, yeah.
It was an unbelievable competitive league at the time. So, do I think we underachieved in terms of silver? Absolutely. But when you put all those pieces of the jigsaw together, I can understand why we probably didn't win as much as we did. You know what I mean? Because it was like every week was something different. Like you're getting up for your Champions League game, then you're getting up for a league game against Shelbourne, but then you're going down. You're playing at the time Waterford weren't the greatest, but it was a local derby, so you're kind of getting a different mindset for Waterford. You're playing Longford, so it was completely up to Finn Harps, and you're after coming back from Europe on the Thursday up to Finn Harps on the Friday. So I can understand why there was not as much silverware on the table for that. So in terms of silverware, yes, but in terms of what we actually achieved on the pitch, I thought it was a strong squad,
It was fantastic, and like moving on those couple of years, then and again, success did follow. Like obviously it didn't happen in 2006, and you were very unlucky again. But 2007, you went on to to win the FAI Cup, and I know there was a bit of trouble started around that time and so on. But again, 2008, you lifted the Setanta Cup, so there was always success within your reach, and it just showed the quality of the squad. And you obviously lost a lot of players over those couple of years, but the base always seemed to be there, where there was with Michael Devine, Hoggy, Benno, Muzz, Gamble, Georgie, yourself, John O'Flynn, and then you were adding in Roy, Kevin Doyle, Liam Kearney, unbelievable players really. Danny Murphy, if you think of it, like it was an unbelievable squad, like, wasn't it?
The player in the Prem now at the moment is Shane Long. Shane, this is just after coming into the underage set up at that stage as well. So when you start naming out all those boys, when I talk to people in terms of your career and what you've done in City, there's some English League One teams don't have those players at the peak that was. So come back around to what you said. Like I was a different type of player to what they were. My job was probably make them better, and to make them score, give a platform for them to score, and then chip in with as many as I could afterwards. But obviously when you're in keeping, you have to score. So it was kind of a weird setup that way. Like I speak to Derek Hall a lot about it, and Neil Horgan at times, where we're talking about, the bigger, older player will never kind of go out of fashion, because,
the different option, isn't it?
It's a completely different option. And even if you look at Fulham now in the Championship playoff final now, they should be after 2-0 against Cardiff. You look at the big man up front there, and they still have it at some of the top clubs in the world, and Chris Wood at Burnley and all these guys who play that hold-up role, but now they have to chip in with goals. They have to chip in with goals all the way through. And I think that's what saves me, was that I was able to chip in with goals as we went along. And when we looked around that squad, and we kind of went, who's scored today? Bloody hell, we were chipping in. It was like pick anyone, really. You know what I mean? From balls come up for headers, Leno from headers, more free kicks. Well, Hoggy never scored, but that's
he scored one, was it, at least?
He scored. He probably scored one or two. Do you know what I mean? But when he did score,
his one against Shell. So how could you forget that?
Yeah.
The yelp, the famous yelp, was it?
Hoggy got the same yelp for a tackle or when he was excited. So it was just, we didn't know whether he was worth or not. But no matter where you went through the spot, Joe didn't score many either. But Joe didn't have the strength in the legs to kick it. You know what I mean? So there was. He was more of a hit off him and go in, But but we had goals all over the pitch. We genuinely did. So when you turn around, you go, we're in trouble today. How do we get out of it? There's always somebody to chip in.
Wouldn't be too worried now with those players behind you. But I suppose before we move on to 2009, which I want to dig into a bit more, just because of how that year kind of went for you. Like you spoke there a while ago about your relationship with the fans, and it was kind of I suppose you were a bit like Marmite, really. You were either loved or disliked by the fans, but you always kind of stuck in there, and you always produced the goods. Your goals were usually kind of worldies as well, so it kept a lot of the kind of disgruntled fans, let's say, quiet for a while.
When I was just falling off the cliff, I'd throw something in. It would was be, the Shelbourne goal, when it got us that break in Shells, and Rico took over, that was the kind of that was changing in the guard there against that Shells team, and all these just kept me falling off the cliff with the fans, in terms of that side of it. But I like, again, with the fans, they're so passionate about wanting to win. When they don't see somebody doing what they think they should be doing, you can understand why they get frustrated. And don't get me wrong, there's times I didn't know what I was doing.
That seemed to work in your favour sometimes, because if you didn't know what you were doing, the defenders definitely didn't.
Absolutely, and then I'd make it look like I did know what I was doing. But you can understand why they get disgruntled. But when they look at George, they look at Fenny, they look at Johnny or Roy or Carney, they were so scripted in what they were doing, in terms of, like, Johnny he'd take a fella on and he'd nearly scored all times, Yet I take a ball in and the first touch could be there, then the next time it mightn't be there, and you might be 1 in 6, 1 in 5, and then like the next game you could be 10 out of 10. So it was just because my upbringing wasn't just soccer, it was the all-rounded one. I didn't have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of pure football feet work. So that I can understand why that got him disgruntled. And then just when they just about had enough, I throw something in and then it'd be all right again.
Yeah, really. Like I said a while ago, the fact that, you've played such an important part for Pat Doolin, Rico, Paul Doolin, Alan Matthews, some of the best managers that have ever been in the league, just shows your work within the team. So I think that speaks for itself, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've been lucky. I've been lucky that they've understood that part of it. And again, I suppose those type managers as well, probably bar Pat Doolin, in terms of he didn't really know my character at that stage. He knew a lot of me, but the dressing room, the atmosphere we created in the dressing room at that time, it was more than just about, can you have a first touch? Can you score a goal? It's about how this team gelled together and what part of that team gelled together, and that group that we had. It was some of the parts more than just what you did on the pitch.
And that's something that we'll get into the teammates later, which I know you're looking forward to. But that was such a huge part of, it's a bit different now, I suppose, where, if you're a higher profile player at a high profile club or whatever it might be, social media and all that kind of goings on kind of really gives an insight to the personalities of the players. But back kind of when you were playing, the fans just saw you on a Friday night and they didn't really see, like, you played a huge part in those dressing rooms, with the banter and, whatever it might have been, hugely liked within the squad by fellow players and stuff like that. And, that's something that the fans don't see directly, but it does play a huge part in football, like, doesn't it? Those Absolutely. Different characters and nuances within the squad.
You're in that bubble with the boys, all the time. And if it's not a nice atmosphere, just forget it. You're not like, who's going to go to the trenches with you if it's not a nice atmosphere? You know what I mean? Yeah. Did we fight and did we argue? Of course we did. You know what I mean? But then, it was definitely, once you cross the white line again, that was it. But if that atmosphere when you go into in the morning isn't right, you ain't going to win anything together. And it wasn't that we set out to be, the cat lap, we walked in and it was all fun and games. When we had to be serious, we were deadly serious. And like I said, there was argument for fight. There was, as you do in any workplace, that you're that intense on each other. But when it came down to it, we knew we could look after each other, and we could take that, and we could look out for each other, because there was no malice behind anything. Everything was done in 100% jest. But then, the work ethic came through then. So if somebody wasn't pulling their weight, you would be pulled up on it. And it was a rare dressing room that many characters, and there were so many characters, like it wasn't just one person pulling the strings.
And
the way that they all clashed off each other, met with each other, laughed together. It's massively important. And you hear everywhere that dressing room is key. But when you start bringing egos and you start bringing, personalities into that dressing room, to have it as right as we had it was rare,
Yeah, and it's something that it kind of made me think twice, really. And speaking to Neil on it as well, is, I was asking him what made that kind of team so special. And I suppose thinking back, a lot of the Cork teams always seem to have a good dressing room, wherever the team seemed to be at. And he put it down to the fact that, unlike, the majority of the league is maybe based in Dublin, and every game is either you're at home or you're practically at home, whereas in Cork you're travelling to all the away games together, it's probably a bit more tight-knit, and players are, going golfing after training, or they're going all together on nights out. And he said with the Dublin teams back then, he said it might have been a bit more like a job, you come in and you go home, and there was lads living outside of Dublin or whatever it was, but if you're in Cork, you're kind of generally in close proximity to yourselves, and you're spending so much time together and travelling. That probably helps as well.
Absolutely it does, and like there's nothing better than a night out to find out what somebody's really like, in terms of, they get a few drinks from them, and you see what their full personality is, and some person you didn't know beforehand, probably you speak to forever more than afterwards.
Yeah.
Being a tight-knit group, there's always somebody does something that it keeps you going for the week. They've done something, or something's happened with the miss, or something's happened at home or whatever. There's always something that'll carry you through the week with a story and a banter, where like that, if you're in Dublin, a lot of these boys are living in their home, and they don't stay literally in, out, in, out, in, out. Whereas in Cork, there's probably 4 or 5 of us in the house together, got the bus up, there was card tables, there was music tables, there was whatever going on in the bus at any given time.
Yeah.
And I suppose that was the weirdest thing when I came back from England that time, when we went up to Derry, and it was a completely new group. There was, I think it was Healers was there, Colin Nuts was there, and a handful of others of the old guard,
Right.
And we went up to Derry, and somebody in the back of the bus texted somebody in the front of the bus instead of going up talking to them, and I just couldn't handle it. I just couldn't. Like you'd basically 3 hours of silence, people with stuff in their ears, and just no talking, no banter, and stuff like that. So completely different to what I was used to. So I couldn't work in that environment. You know what I mean? You have to, you have to have interaction with people, and you have to, find out what they're about at any given time. And and ultimately there was times where fellas were having hard times, be it at home, or be it training, or be it whatever it was. And because we were such a tight-knit group, you were always able to put your hand around them, or take your mind off by doing something else. And it was a weird scenario we had going on, but it worked,
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of moving on to 2009 then, which is a kind of pivotal year for yourself really in your own career. As you touched on the start, Paul Doolin came in, and Colin spoke and Joe spoke. They loved what he stamped on the squad and his ways. And again, as I said, I was there at the time yourself. It was extremely difficult, I think, at the time, and it was brand new to me. I'd never been kind of training full time before, but I know from kind of even your own reaction that it was a bit more extreme than probably what you'd been used to maybe over the previous years. How did you find that, as you say, under Paul? Maybe had a bit of love-hate relationship, but it worked certainly, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Paul was definitely he was what the way to describe him. He was so focused on a specific goal that the kind of the pleasantries went out the window. Kind of way, like you could pass balls in the hallway and nothing would be said. Nor did there need to be anything said either. Kind of way, but there was the pleasantry. It was literally, we're getting this done no matter what it takes. But then the level of intensity that he brought training to, some of the stuff he brought training, some of these technical stuff, it was unbelievable, and what he brought that way. Definitely one of the best coaches we had, but what they say about the best coaches, they probably aren't the best manager, and vice versa, and in terms of like that, now if somebody was having a hard time, Paul will go, well, tough, you sorted yourself out. And the thing is, we didn't have enough time then to step in and say, all right, look, we'll try and help him out here, because he was on your case 24/7, So, but his technical ability, some of his training was one of the best I've come across. And he probably took me in terms of sharpness to probably the best level I've been at sharpness-wise. Fitness-wise, I was probably the best when Pat came in. Sharpness-wise, which is obviously a different type of fitness, was probably there when Paul was there. but you were under scrutiny 24/7. Really under scrutiny 24/7. He was very, very focused on what he wanted to get done and what he wanted to achieve. But then everything that was going on around the club at the time didn't mean to really do what we wanted. You know?
Yeah. And like even in that season, you know, and I know that we'll get your kind of move, but you know, I suppose Paul, and I've heard him speaking before, and he's been questioned on his kind of, I suppose, his ways really, like, and his approach to it. But I suppose it's the results really that he's has produced is what backs him up every time. And the team finished like third that season, was practically, you know, torn apart by the end of the season, and we finished third, which, you know, and everything that went on that year was like no one will really experience it unless you were part of it, and how difficult it was. But to finish third that season was better nearly than winning the league, like, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one thing that Paul that I'll always have for Paul is that, like, even though he was a I wouldn't really call it a taskmaster, but he was so focused on what he was looking to do that players always came first. And I know it's a bit of a contradiction in terms of like his management. Like, everything that was going on, he didn't care. Like, if we came to him and said, Paul, we're not happy with this or this is happening, boom, he was getting it done. And that's what I mean by that. He probably didn't have the man management skills that Rico had or Alan Matthews had.
On a one-to-one basis, anyway.
On a one-to-one basis, exactly. You know, that wouldn't be his forte. But then again, he was dealing with men and professional footballers. So he thought there was no need to either, or he had Tommy Dunn there for that as well, you know. But when it came down to the nitty-gritty, and if you weren't happy with something, or if there was something wrong with what was going on, he had your corner 24/7, you know. And that, I suppose, that period there where you were kind of going, I don't know, can I really play for do what he's trying to do here, you know? When we started going through that period and he stood up for us, and in every scenario, there was probably a lot more respect that came out from him in that regard than any other time, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, that, like you say, the training and all that, and obviously it was a lot down to the way the club went, but your move to Hartlepool came along then, but probably at the right time, as you say. You were probably not as sharp as you've ever been and all that, you know. How did you find that? You know, I know you were kind of in around you at the time. You were excited about it, and I know we had a joke about Paul, his Ripley believe it or not comment, and that we always have the joke about that. But at the time, it was, you know, you were thrilled with it, I think, just to kind of get another chance at it across the water.
Of course, and there's always that period or part, no matter what you play or what level you play at, there's always unfinished business, no matter where you're at. And even going back over, there's always some bits of unfinished business. Should I have done this? Shouldn't I have done that? Should I have moved here when I did? But I was looking up at that time. I'd set up little kickers here, and I had kind of settled in for the long haul as such, you know. Right. So I was looking at after football and what I could get into with that, and then to get that phone call, because I'd been talking to my agent Kevin Horton for probably 2 years on it, and there wasn't anything there that enticed me enough to leave, you know. And then, obviously, with everything happening in the club, there was no decision to be made, you know. I was nearly kicked out the door. I kicked out the door with the club to get the money in, that kind of way, and not in a bad way. But there was no decision to be made, and it was very simple at the time. So made that move over, and again, probably going from what we call a family club, kind of a family club again in Hartlepool. Right. You know, that's such a tight community over there, you know. It's unbelievable because they're stuck between Middlesbrough, Newcastle, and Sunderland. They have to fight their own corner, you know, and you know, being called a monkey hanger isn't exactly the best name in the world that they could have had. It didn't kind of shine him in the best light, but you know, it was an unbelievably well-run club, you know, owned by a Norwegian oil company, but they rarely put money into it. It was just a fully self-sufficient club, you know. And obviously Joe joined us after that there as well then. But it was good going to that type of a club that you were going to be looked after and seen through, and Chris Turner, a very good manager as well, but a little bit on the relaxed side a bit, if that made sense. So then I went from Paul to that. And then
which probably, like you said, Paul at the time wasn't easy, but if you look back afterwards, it's the best thing for you, really. Like, you know, keeping you that intense.
And if I could have kept that level when I was in the UK, now people would say, how the hell did you drop it over there? But you're going over moving. It probably took me 3 months to get settled in, moving from apartment to house, to getting bank accounts, getting a car, moving stuff over. It takes you 3 months to settle in. So, instead of staying back after training to do extra bits, you go to the bank, make sure you get to the bank before it closes, because you have to get that paperwork done. You have to go to an estate agent to move a house. You get your car that was supposed to be promised you by the lease company, then they didn't. You could go get another one. So you're kind of all over the place for the first 2 or 3 months, and your sharpness just slowly starts to wane away. And because I was coming in the middle of my season, and they were in the start of their season, I was probably 3 or 4 levels ahead of them in terms of fitness and sharpness. So then what happens is you slightly drop down to their level, but you're still fine in terms of your own fitness. But if I could have kept that sharpness level all the way through, again, you're thinking about if you had done some things differently, then I probably would have done better than I did over there. But that was just a matter of circumstance,
Yeah, and because you got off to a flyer really for the first year or so over there, like scoring loads of goals, and then it was the kind of the second this year, or that it kind of you started kind of losing faith in it.
Yeah, I was again like that. It's about having luck and the managers believing in you. I had all these managers that wanted me part of the squad, and then when Chris left and Mick Wadsworth took over, he was assistant to Bobby Robson in Newcastle, and he wanted to bring in Nono Solano. It would have been a huge signing for him, and no matter what I did, I couldn't do anything right, and that's fine. That's what I mean by football is football.
Like,
and it's a marketplace. But again, being the way I was, tried to prove him wrong, got back into the team, and scored 1 or 2 goals towards the end to make sure we didn't get relegated. And I suppose a mini win in my own head. But he was, like I said, he was probably the only manager that I wouldn't talk to again in terms of how he treated us over there. But that's fine. You know what I mean? That's I probably get along with 99% of the population from across. 1% isn't going to kill me,
Yeah, absolutely. And you said was it always on your mind to come home then after that kind of didn't work out, or did you look kind of elsewhere in England, or did you kind of have your mind made up that you wanted to get closer to home?
It was a bit of both, like Pat Sullivan got on to be in Limerick, and he had a lovely project going on down there, and obviously being Limerick and being home and the home club, it was something that was thereabouts in my mind. I'd not offer Hamilton, but Hamilton wanted me to go on trial. If I went on trial, I wouldn't have had insurance. There was a load of different things in the background that meant if I went, that if anything happened, I would have lost my contract in Hartlepool. So there was a couple of different facets going on in the background. Deals between the club and my agent weren't working out right. So what I said was that I would wait until the season started in Ireland, and I come back, and it would pass. With Tommy in Cork at the time, and Pat just was, I suppose he was trying to do the very best for Limerick at the time, and everybody says there was huge money down there. That there wasn't. Like I've been asked that question multiple times. Did you come back for money, or did you come back for then why did you come to Cork? And what Pat was a very genuine man. He wanted to take Cork or Limerick football back up to the top again. He was trying to do it right. He got in Pat Scully, who was a decent manager, Pat, to be fair to him, and it was a project I liked, and to be part of your home club, or home county club, I suppose, come back into the Premier Division was enticing enough, To be honest with you, I probably would have worked out better staying in Cork financially, because by the time you go up and down to Limerick that many times,
I know.
You don't come out too far ahead, So there wasn't the stupid money people were throwing around that was there at the time. It was the project that was good. It obviously ended up in the Markets field where you ultimately wanted it to go to, but then obviously they've had money,
Yeah, and you picked up a first division title, did you, in Limerick as well?
Yeah.
So wasn't a bad period at all, yeah.
We were so close that year, the first year when I came in. And every time I thought it would be, he was curse my name, because City would score and they'd be winning, and next thing I'd score a late goal or I'd do something, and I had like 14 and 21 or something like that game, and it was just all last minute goals. City were thinking they were only 3 or 4 points ahead. Next thing we'd score late on, and a point behind, and I think we just lost that year then, because we rested players against that loan. We drew against that loan, and then that season for City, obviously the famous Shelbourne night, you know. So again, that was kind of a bittersweet one for me there. You know, good to see City got back up, but we were so close in Limerick at the time. And then obviously we played City 2 or 3 times, scoring as well against City. It's a mad experience, you know, scoring against the club we've been with. But luckily enough, Nulty gave me a belt when I scored that I could stay down. There was no chance of me celebrating or doing anything stupid that would have got me in trouble. You know? But yeah, that was a weird enough experience. But then coming back in the year later, you know, we again with the Joe down there and Rory Gaffney that was over in the UK there for years. He was at he's back to Shamrock there now, and he was over playing with the Man Salford and the boys over there, the Man City youth team that took over there, or Man U youth team, sorry, with all the Nevilles and all that. So he's had a very good career as well, you know. You know, a bit of a Shane Long character in terms of, you know, Braves a lion, and you know, he could do anything at any given time for Rory that time. So we had some unbelievable players. Dominic Foley came back in from Bruges, a lot of experience, gifted footballer. Paddy Purse at the back, goalkeepers in the Ryans, and we just a very, very good, strong squad at that time. So we won the league well that year then. And then new manager again came in, didn't like me, and off to go again. You know, it's just it's all goes. Yeah. So I've been lucky enough, medals wise in Ireland. You know, the only medal I don't have is the League Cup medal. You know, that I could have played in. You know, so one senior to the FAI, the league, first division. You know, so I don't have a bad medal, or if I can find half of them, that's the question. You know, they're up there somewhere. But
kids are probably playing with them as we speak. But you came back then, and with City in 2013. But you were you coming to your end then? Thereabouts. You're kind of, I suppose, in a professional sense anyway.
So that's it. So we had a baby on the way. You know, so I moved back up to Cork then. I was talking to Tommy, and you know, I was just starting to work at that stage, and I was, you know, part-time, full-time, part-time, full-time. You know, then it's waning. You know, it's that and when Tommy I think was nearing the end as well, and his tenure. So we just said, look, we signed, but then there was an injury, and then it just had to fit. So we just said, look, enough. So at that stage, 2013 was kind of just, I suppose, a final till swan song. Yeah, if that made sense, even though we didn't get to play many games that year, you know. Yeah,
very good. And I know that coming towards the end of your career, coaching, as you say, they're being involved in Carrigaline and stuff like that. That was always kind of, and I suppose still is a part of your kind of your life and stuff like that. But kind of take it outside the football. Then, how was your kind of, you know, your slipstream, I suppose, from the footballing world into the working world? Did you find it difficult? Did you find it refreshing for something different? You know, how was that for you?
Yeah, it is. I suppose I was lucky enough that like I said, I set up little kickers before I went to England.
Yeah.
And I was kind of constantly working in the background of that. But then when I was finishing up with City in 2013, we were looking to progress that and get it in more venues, and so I kind of had a softer exit, you know, than most. That you just finish and there's nothing else in the background. So I kind of had that going as well, and then I was doing teamwear as well, so I kind of stayed in the football kind of scene as well, doing the teamwear. So I was gone, but I wasn't, you know. So I was kind of still there, but then when I fully kind of stepped away from the dressing room was such, you know, there's a mad void that you leave in any given day, that you're used to getting up, going into a dressing room with, you know, 20 odd other fellas, and the banter start flying. Now you're getting up and it's just kind of yourself, you know. My wife Linda was working at the time. We just Dara was after, was probably 6 months, 8 months now. She was gone back to work. He was having to go to crash. So then all of a sudden, a year later, you found yourself kind of in that limbo land of you know, what am I getting up here for, you know? So it's a hard transition that way. Thankfully, I had a softer kind of route out of it. I didn't just finish and that was it. So I can understand why some players, when they finish football after, you know, 10, 12 years, there's nothing else, only training, looking after yourself, not going to christenings, weddings, funerals, whatever it may be, to play football, and then all of a sudden you've all this time in your hand. You go, bloody hell, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah.
But I was looking up to stop the transition there, you know.
Excellent. And look, all seems to be well now, which is great to see. And look, thanks for kind of giving us a run through of your career, and again, the huge kind of part of City's history, and still a fan's favourite, even if it's not all the fans, but the majority, I think, are you're still held fondly in their hearts without a doubt. But we'll go on to some questions from the fans now, actually. So we have a lot of questions coming in through our Instagram story. So Robert O'Connell on the first one there said, what was your favourite goal? If you want to go for, if it's for City, happy days. But if it's not, maybe let us know which is your other. You scored a few belters over the years, whether you meant them or not. But you have scored a few belters.
Like half of them I didn't know what I was doing. Those are right. There was probably two really. I remember the goal we scored up in Derry, lobbed the keeper from, I think it was about 30 yards out. Moons. It was on Alamatthew, and Moons was after scoring two unbelievable goals up in Derry away, and the ball was headed clear. It bounced in front of me. I can always remember Dan Murray in the background just saying no, and as I hit it, he'd no it or the yes all in the same background, and that was nice. But probably the one was the Shelbourne goal. Even though the cup final goal was great and it won us the cup final, of course it did.
Yeah.
But I think the Shelbourne goal under Damien that time, left-footed coming in, and I hit it, and it broke that hole that Shelbourne had on us for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I think that goal was the one that kind of sticks out in terms of having the most significance in terms of us pushing on as a group,
Yeah. Brilliant. Thomas McGee again on Instagram said, best player you played with. So it doesn't have to be at City, it could be elsewhere as well.
Yeah, the best player I played with. It's kind of a tricky one, because probably the best player I played was definitely at City. The Hartlepool was that there was good technical players there, and probably the best player at City. Like Benny he's technically unbelievable. Except he didn't move. He just stood in one area, and it got me to move all the time for him. So I can't give him that accolade. Probably at the time, Kevin and Roy were the two. Flenny was brilliant. Georgie was superb. But in terms of like just pure being able to change a game and influence he had was probably was Doyler. He was just he just had that knack of always being able to get the right touch on the ball, the right finish on the ball. And just an all-round good lad as well.
Yeah, he's great fella. He was on the podcast last week. He's still as sound as ever. But Cian Hurley there, so
you never know Tyler if he's going to cry or not. He's stuck in that natural cry zone. Even on RT or anything, you just don't know if he's talking to you, he's crying again for you. Do you know what I mean? So he's that nice good lad.
Great stuff. Yeah. So Cian Hurley actually said, "Give us your thoughts on the current team at the moment."
Yeah, it's crazy, because obviously it's not the current team that was there 6 months ago.
Very true.
It's very hard to give your thoughts on them when they've changed so much again. I think Neil obviously has a great project, but a difficult job as well on his hands. He'll have to look at the best of Cork for the foreseeable future anyway, to try and get them going. From what I'm hearing in pre-season games, and you probably vote for that, Paul, they're hopping fit, in terms of how they've got it, and that's all that Neil and Joe can do for the time being, is get them right as much as possible, get them fit, get them competitive, get them to the level where we can hopefully have a platform to go forward. But there's some good Cork players around, and if they can get competitive and get going again, obviously it's going to be very different with COVID and no fans and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be weird, but being competitive again this year and just getting them to a level where they can build a platform, again, try to improve those players or get a few more players back in, that'll help. That'll make a big difference. So it's kind of hard to call on the group now, because it's not the same group that was there a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch. They're chomping at the bit anyway, that's for sure, and we'll see how it goes. The next one there, Ben O'Driscoll, actually asked the question: do you play any other sports? But I think you kind of mentioned that how key, your multi-sport upbringing was in your footballing career. I think you said you basically played more sports, really: rugby, basketball, Gaelic football, hurling.
So they all did. Like I tried to go back and play for a couple of games with GA when I finished soccer, but yeah, after 13 years old, it doesn't work. The ankle, it ain't there, and especially with dislocated shoulder when I did it up in Derry, I can only reach up about that high now at this stage. So that didn't happen. I don't claim to be able to play golf because the boys will quench that fairly quickly. So I'm a very good 24 and a bad 18 in golf. Again, I don't take golf too seriously either. It's more to get out and about it from time to time.
Brilliant. And just the last one there. So, what does it take to become a professional footballer? From one of our young fans there on Instagram as well.
What does it take? Me personally, I just think it is 100% trying to be yourself, and I know that's kind of a weird one, because you're always going to be a better version of yourself. But if you're true to what you believe is right, and you stick at what your thought process is, and you work as hard as you possibly can to get fitter, stronger, faster, and you're always trying to do that. But if you can always just come back and say, well, look, I did it to the best of my ability. I wasn't fake in trying to do something I can't do. Then you'll always have longevity because you're always coming back to the true version of yourself in that regard. But in terms of training side of things, feet are absolutely important. Many people said, go dancing, do all these kind of things. And back in the day, they would have laughed at you, People doing karate, dancing, all these things like that, they all had your feet, and your feet and your agility are worth anything,
Yeah. Brilliant. So that wraps up our questions from the fans. So there's some great questions there. Thanks for that. And just the last one there, moving on to the main event, I suppose, our teammates. So looking forward to getting stuck into this one. So we have around 7 or 8 questions. So the best and worst trainer. So again, you can pick Cork City players, or you can maybe look at players that outside the Cork City that you would have played with. But give us your best.
I'll be kind on this one, So we over in Hartlepool with the lad Adam Boyd, and he was the only man I know. We went on a run, and he ended up in an ambulance with tinfoil around him. So that tells you everything you need to know. So he would definitely win that one. Adam Boyd is
the worst trainer, is it?
Worst trainer, absolutely.
So
I don't think anybody could top him now, even that City.
Best trainer.
Best trainer, like Benno was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable in his thing. Lenny was phenomenal, in terms of the way he just looked after himself and how he dedicated every kind of day to training, So yeah, probably between the two of those in terms of best trainer, in that side of things, they would have always been high on that list. Now Nolte was always just a naturally fit person as well. Then when he did the run, he just take off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I don't know if that constitutes best trainer.
That the goalkeeper, it doesn't count really, does it?
No, he's not really a footballer.
The fastest.
The fastest, yeah, so probably Roy won hands down and all those. You know what I mean? Roy was lightning. Yeah, I don't think there's much other competition there on that side.
Yeah, the funniest. So I know you would have been a key member of the banter brigade really that was going on in the dressing room at the time. But any others that were played a key role with you?
The funniest, yeah. Like again, Plenty was a bit of a character without a shadow of a doubt. Darren Murphy was superb when he came in as well. Darren for his part of it. So it probably between the two of those. Leon was mad as a hatter. Liam McSweeney when he was there as well. So yeah, there was a couple of us in that group that that we bounced off each other in terms of have that. But probably in a weird way, Neil Horgan was probably the most subtle, funniest person you get. He'd always throw something in and walk away, and he'd just leave it dangling there for you. Yeah. So Hoggy, in a mad sense, he was just a little silent assassin with his comments.
You and Hoggy hopped off each other well, to be fair, didn't he?
We did, yeah. How we didn't end up killing each other now for times. We always had the gag one day how he'd come to blows. We never really got there. Never really got there.
Brilliant. So the best dressed and the worst dressed. So Dennis, you have been nominated for the worst dressed on a numerous occasions. So you'll have to come back on this.
I know. No gambling, why you would have had me for those anyway. But like Nulty has to be for the worst dress. He'd a pair of jeans with leather stripes down the side of it. I've never seen the likes of my life. You know, they were just, I don't know where he got them from. You know what I mean? You must be, you know, Uncle Vince and Uncle Paul were probably handing them out at some stage. They were shocking. So I have to give it to him for that. And the best dressed, there was nobody throwing out anything. Like Benny and Joe thought they had a shop and they had the best style going, but it wasn't really up there, like, you know. So there wasn't much thrown out in that regard. Benny had pointy shoes back when, you know, maybe he thought he was in the 80s again, you know. But yeah, the best dress. I never really got into it, you know. Plenty had a good bit of gear, all right. George had a bit of gear. But yeah, I don't think I'd give an accolade to somebody. Go, geez, I'd love to dress like him now. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I know I wouldn't wear Nulty jeans with leather stripe or whatever fudge they were, you know.
What about the time that I know Danny Murphy mentioned just after about the T-shirt that the lads signed, your gasoline T-shirt, and you wore it around for a couple of days? Do you have any comeback on that?
That was like, normally I'd be picking up on a gag, you know, normally, but it was. And normally these boys can't even spell their name, right? They can't even write. They spit. But it was the first time they ever actually neatly in a felt tip pen put their wording into the black. So it was a black and white T-shirt with loads of designs and scribbles on it. So I couldn't, and it was laughing at me for about 2 days. You know, no, I wasn't wearing the same T-shirt for the 2 days. So they were just laughing at me for 2 days to figure out what they were on about. And they asked me to have a look at the T-shirt back and everything. So I actually have the T-shirt with all the boys' signatures on it, whether they like it or not. I was just surprised that they can spell their name, to be honest with you.
But what would you say back to the players that have said that you have the worst dress sense? Would you dispute that?
The definition of worst dress is somebody that isn't happy in their own skin, right? So I was very happy wearing what I was. I was very happy wearing what I was wearing. You know, nobody could ever rip me for trying to pull off a Gucci pair of runners or shoes. As I said to the young kid there, you know, I was always true to what I was happy wearing, and if they didn't like it, I really didn't care, you know.
Brilliant. There was some great times, really. Like, wasn't there, you know, in the dressing room on a daily basis, all that stuff, like.
And like I said, if that's the worst they got, to look at the state of the club you're wearing. You know what I mean? So like, if you can't take that test and you don't have something to come back with, then you might as well give up, you know. But yeah, there were some great times, you know. You never really appreciate them when you're in it because you're fighting your own corner, just trying to deflect onto somebody else. You know, the state is one there, but yeah, it was all in good jest. You know what I mean? But there was somebody always did something every week, no matter what happened. There was something in the background every week, and you always had something to talk about for that week, and it got you through week to week on different levels. You know, being either a tough week or a light week or whatever it was. You know, and yeah, we had I suppose we had a squad there and a group together that was probably special in any era, you know, in terms of on the pitch and off the pitch, you know.
Absolutely. And the next one is best singer.
Best singer. I love an old tune as well. I wouldn't say I'm a good singer, but I love an old tune, you know. Best singer, Jesus.
Greg's after getting the nod a few times for his.
Who?
Greg.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, as in, yeah, he's probably he's streaks ahead of everybody else there, you know. Greg could only had it anybody from opera to Westlife, to you name it, he could do it. You know, I remember there was a Eurovision song, "We Got the World Tonight." That's you know, and he was singing that in the dressing room and in the shower, and he was probably better than the boys who were singing it in Eurovision. That absolutely, that was a no-brainer. I didn't have him in my mind, and I was just thinking of the guard that kind of came after him, and there was nobody there that could sing, not the hope in hell, you know. So we always had fellas trying to sing, but they couldn't. But Greg was streaks ahead for everybody.
He was excellent. So the second last one there, team MVP. So maybe the player that you played with, we'll go with City for this one, that you thought it couldn't really work without him, like, you know.
Yeah. look, I suppose Moz has to. I know I give Kevin the nod in terms of best player, but I think without Moz at the back, marshalling everything. Mick Devine was superb in goal as well. Like, he was phenomenal at times, But I think in terms of the whole thing together, he was the captain. He couldn't say a sentence without a swear word. It was just inbuilt in on him. But he was definitely the driving force at all times. They either chipped in the goal. I remember over Limassol, getting the back post header that got us through in that round. He scored multiple goals. His feet were phenomenal for a big man.
Yeah.
And then I suppose you can't go through without George, really, in terms of another man with character. You hate him or love him. You killed him one day, you hate him the next day. He really didn't care the best of times, but he made a lot of people stick around him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Frustrating character at the best of times, but you had to love him for that as well. If you didn't know what he was about, you kill him.
Yeah.
But he definitely made the team tick. But look, as a whole, probably Moz was the key man.
Yeah, I agree. So you're the last one there. So your favourite League of Ireland player?
My favourite League of Ireland player. Favorite League of Ireland player. There was a couple of them. Shelburne had 5 or 6 great players. Alan Moore was superb. Richie Baker was superb. I'd probably go with Alan Moore just for what he could have done outside the city, obviously, for what he could have done with the ball. Phenomenal,
Yeah, he was an excellent player. Denis, it's been a pleasure, and I think a fantastic episode to wrap up our season 1 of City Talk. So thanks for some great stories and a run through of your footballing career. Really appreciate you coming on. And again, like you said to Kevin last week, hopefully everything kind of gets back to normal and we can see you back out in the cross, kind of supporting the lads in the very near future. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Paul. Pleasure. Thank you.
No worries at all. So again, that wraps up our season 1 and episode 12 of City Talk. Thanks again to Denis for coming on. Keep tuned to our YouTube channel, Rebel Army TV, and we'll be back with season 2 very soon. So you can catch up on this episode on Rebel Army TV, and you can listen on SoundCloud, Spotify, Android, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast from. Thank everybody for listening to the first season. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone listening that really enjoyed it also. We'd love to get some feedback from the fans for season 2 in regards to what guests they would like to see, maybe different scenarios, different layouts, and so on. So any feedback in that regard would be greatly appreciated, because it's a podcast from the club for the fans, and we'd like to kind of see what you want in that regard. So thanks everybody for listening, and see you soon. Thanks very much.
Now, Greg Bolger, surrounded by the core players. Here's Darragh O'Connor, 1-0. O'Connor's first goal for Cork City puts them ahead.